We are coming to our last presentation for the day today. Sexual and gender diversity. As we mentioned earlier during the day about sexual behaviors, and we said that there should be only one sexual behavior. The sexual behavior designed by God and according to God's plan. We say the same thing when it comes to gender or sexual diversity, because as we shall see right now, how God created us from the beginning, male and female. Listen to these verses. So God created us in His own image. Please focus and try to think a little bit about own image. In the image of God, He created him. Why He said him here? Because He was referring to the first creation, Adam. Adam was created male. He was formed and created before Eve. But then the verse says, male and female, He created them. Something new here. It started with him, and now it ends with them. Who are them? Male and female, Adam and Eve. And again, in the image of God. In the image of God. In Adam and Eve, we see the two genders together. Different but integrated. They complete each other. They perfect each other. And then God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it. That's the outproduct of this loving relationship between Adam and Eve, husband and wife, male and female, to be blessed with having children. God's purposes. In the Old Testament, Genesis 2:24, it says, therefore a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. You're talking about Genesis now. The two shall become one flesh from the beginning. And then Christ would come and repeat the same theme, maybe a little bit even more clarification. Have you not read that He who made them at the beginning, made them male and female, and said, for this reason, now the reference here is coming from Genesis 2. For this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Again, Christ took Adam and Eve and returned them back to the paradise. Took all of us in the New Testament and put us back into the image He had intended to live or to do with us, intended for us to do in our life. No shame and no guilt. Because in the paradise, Adam and Eve were both naked, the man and his wife, and were not ashamed. And that also proves that in between husbands and wives there is no shame, no guilt. they can be naked for each other and they don't feel the shame. That's what pleases God, what fulfills His own plans. So nowadays, we started to hear more about stuff like homosexuality, bisexuality, and other gender confused behaviors. By the way, when we say confused, because it is really a confusion. And let me explain that. You know, when we go back to the old trends, the scientific trends in medicine, you will see a difference. You remember I spoke to you earlier about the DSM, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Psychiatric Disorders. That book, the first book, was issued in probably 1950s or 40s, something like that, long time ago. And it was named as DSM-1, means first edition. In 2012, we have now the DSM-5. In between 1 and 5, there was 2, 3, and 4. If you go back to the DSM 1 and 2 and 3 maybe until the 1970s, you will find that these DSMs defined homosexuality and other paraphilia as what? Disorders. Calling them gender confused disorders. Those people were confused. Why? And this actually, we still see that in actual life. Those people who are dealing with mental health, with education, human scientists, they observe that. But unfortunately, after the 1970s, a very strong political movement started to erupt, supported financially by very, very rich, multi-billionaire homosexuals and bisexuals, to try to define homosexuality as a normal behavior. And this is what our children are facing today. During gender development, during the early years, children are supposed to end up with something called gender identity. This gender identity is based on their physical body, their sex glands, and the hormones that control the sexual development, and end up with normal feeling that I am a man or I am a woman, and accept that. Accept that. And this will add stability into their life. Gender identity. What would be the very critical years? We used to say the critical years in gender development or gender identity development are the years of adolescence, from age 12 to age 19 or 20. They all used to say, by age 19 and 20, a boy will define himself as a young man. A girl would define herself as a young woman. Normally. And The job of parents is about to support that trend inside the child or the adolescent child. They would help him. A man, even nature would say that. Nature would say that a girl after age 12 needs a mother to help her recognize her own gender as a woman. A boy after age 12 would need a father to help him recognize his manhood, his gender as a man. However, all these socio-political changes in the world since the late 1970s and 1980s that gained very strong power to the degree that homosexuality has been accepted by so many as a way of living, even another kind of marriage, marital life. Governments now would legalize homosexual marriages. How does this impact our children? This is very important. Impact on family and society. Or impact on family and society. Both ways. Children would come back from school one day, a child would come and say to mom or dad, I am a gay, or I am a lesbian. That this happen? Yes. It's so scary. I mean, we always think in a little bit denial that this would never happen to my child. Unfortunately, it's not the case. Every now and then, we receive a call or meet with a parent shocked. Like that story that I mentioned earlier this afternoon. The father who called Abuna called me middle of the night because that father said, what should I do, Abuna? My 10-year-old boy was dismissed from school after several warnings because he had been engaged in homosexual activities with other boys. And when the father said to the boy, this is not right. So how the boy answered, I like it. I love to do that. How and why this happens? We'll see it. Let me first refer to what our faith says. In Romans 1:26 and 27, for this reason, God gave them up to vile passions. Vile passions. Vile like evil. For even their women exchanged the natural use for what is against nature. Likewise also the men, leaving the natural use of the woman, burned in their lust for one another, men with men, committing what is shameful and receiving in themselves the penalty of their error which was due. Then 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9 and 10. Do you not know that the unrighteous will not inherit the kingdom of God. Do not be deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor homosexuals, nor sodomites, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners will inherit the kingdom of God. Someone may ask me, what's the difference between homosexuals and sodomites? Sodomites means any kind of practicing anal sex between a man and man or a woman and woman. But homosexuals is more definitive of having sex with the same gender. 1 Timothy 1:9 to 12. We also know that the law is made not for the righteous, but for lawbreakers and rebels, the ungodly and sinful, the unholy and irreligious, for the sexually immoral, for those practicing homosexuality, etc. Very clear. However, when we study homosexuality, for example, or bisexuality, or transgenderism, or anything like that, we will see, as I said earlier, a very sad story behind each one of those people. You feel for them. In my practice, almost 40 years now, I saw many, many cases of homosexuality, male and female. And I can assure you 100% that 100% of my caseload of homosexuals had a history of sexual or psychological trauma in their life. Some trauma happened. They were exposed to some experience that left them with scars in their minds. And that scar shaped up their homosexual behavior, their preferences. So what are we seeing today? Socio-political approach of homosexuality. However, listen to this. If you go and live among homosexuals in their communities, by the way, they tend to lock up themselves and close their community. They don't open easily to anybody. You know why? Because they fear their exposure. Unfortunately, homosexuals in many generations were persecuted, abandoned, killed, tortured. Yes.
Until now.
And maybe until now.
In Brazil.
Huh?
Until now in Brazil.
In Brazil?
Yeah, I have lots of clients that are homosexual fleeing Brazil for this reason.
Yeah. It's like something so shameful to have a homosexual person in your family, for example. And you can see that even in our Coptic community. What are those 4 Ds? Miserable. Dependence, depression, death and destruction, and defiance. What's dependence? The highest level of chemical dependence and substance abuse happens among homosexuals. Because deeply, deeply, they are not happy with themselves. And one way to numb their feelings, unfortunately, is just to use drugs and alcohol and other stuff. chemical dependence, substance abuse and addiction. Highest rates among them. The other D is depression. They have the highest level of depression in any other category, social category, and can be explained in many ways in light of the nature of homosexual life. You know, even if they find pleasure in their homosexual acts, but still there is some deep feeling inside them that will tell them, you are not doing the right thing. I remember one time I went to serve in Egypt with Abuna Dawood Lamek years ago. And Abuna asked me to sit with one of those cases. And just when I listened to that person's story, it was so painful. Because that guy, didn't have any healthy upbringing in his childhood. And then he was used or abused by other boys until homosexual life or homosexuality has become part of his life. And he can talk to you for hours. He loves God. He comes to church. He is a deacon. And he's having all the support from everybody in the church. But he's still, within himself, he's suffering from depression. Lost. Death and destruction. You know what depression leads them into? Suicide, yes. Higher incident of sexually transmitted diseases. Just they need love, need care. They need unconditional acceptance and forgiveness. And that's how they come back to God. And then they stop doing everything wrong. Normalizing the abnormal. That defines the resistance. Now let me categorize victims of substance of homosexuality. By the way, homosexuality, bisexuality, we'll talk about that too, other forms. Victims of trauma. That's number one category. Number two, victims of upbringing, childhood. Number three, victims of power and peers, forced into that. And last, victims of dysfunctional marriages. So, victims of trauma. Let me start with the story. I'm not sure whether I told you that story before, but I will repeat because it's still, making me so sad. About that girl who was playing in a corner of her room when she was 3 years old. Playing with what? With her dolls. And her brother was around. Her older brother was probably 8 years. And then a guest family would come, father and mother and 2 children. The younger child, a boy, was 12. He would go around the house and find that little girl, age 3, playing with her dolls in her room. So he would take off her clothes, underwear, and start to have sex with her. Who would find that? Her older brother. would come into the room and find that and starts to fight the boy. Get out of here! There! So the boy got scared and left the home. The brother went to the mother and said to her, Mommy, did you see what happened to my sister? And the mother went quickly to see. She was busy with the guests. And the mother would see her daughter sitting back, playing with her dolls, fully clothed, nothing wrong. But her son would explain what happened to the mother. What would you do if you were in that mother's shoes? You would say, normally, the girl will forget. Not even bring that subject ever. She never even thought of telling her husband. And everything looked okay. That young lady at age 18 went to college. After a weekend, left back to the dorms, and her mother got into her bedroom and found a book. She forgot of that book on the desk. That book says, How to be a Better Lesbian. Immediately the mother would call me. I was at work, but I stopped everything because she was in shock. We knew that family for a long time. Very, very, very Christian family. Good servants in church. Beautiful in every aspect. Open arms, open their homes to shelter anybody. And the mother calls and said, What happened? My daughter was a very good daughter. She never dated any boy. I never noticed anything wrong with her. So immediately it hit my mind to ask her, Tell me about childhood. Nothing. And all of a sudden, she remembered that instant. Now I remember, when she was 3, things happened. I said to her, that's it. This is exactly what is meant by trauma. Because trauma means that the child was exposed to something beyond and above his or her capacity to deal with that kind of event. It's like a heavy load that the brain of the child cannot take, especially when the event would target those centers that are not ready to deal with sexuality, for example. When the child, that poor girl, was played with sexually, something happened into her mind, that trauma, that made her losing desire completely, or get attracted towards boys. Now the mother started to understand why she was trying to have boys like other teenage girls, boyfriends, but she never had one. So how would the mother understand that? My daughter is a good daughter, a perfect daughter. Of course, we learn from those experiences. When a mother would come and say, my son is 18 or 19 and he never talks to any girl, he likes to talk to boys, I may start to raise the flags. When my daughter doesn't like to be around boys and she is 19 or 20, same thing. So, I went to visit that family later on, and the girl asked me for lunch. I was close to the family. I went her for lunch that afternoon, and she opened the subject. What do you think, Uncle Yousry, about homosexuality? So I said, well, it is about trauma from my experience. And she said, no, I am a lesbian. She was, at that time, she was 18, 19. I'm a lesbian and I never had trauma in my life. And I had to tell her the story. Her mother said, if you can tell her, that will be fine. She would accept it from you. And the girl was shocked and never remembered anything. However, she accepted what I said and went back home and checked with Mama, and Mama would tell her exactly the same story. But it's hard to make reversal when the person is getting into adulthood. Very hard. Another case, trauma victims, talking about 3-year-old, a 6-year-old girl would be playing around with her older brother. And, there is some guest here. So one of the friends of her dad, a man of like 27, 28, and she was 6. And then play what's called the stromaya, hiding. Hide and seek. The 27-year-old man, a friend of her dad, uncle, would take her into a dark room to hide from her brother. And who would let her sit on his lap and starting to do something sexual on her. She didn't understand. Many of those kids don't understand by their cognition what's going on, but they feel the sexual stimulus. They feel it. That girl left him quickly, went away, and then he came after her and took her back and did it again. So he left. And she never forgot that experience. The first time when she was referred to me by her father in confession, she was like 19 or 20. At that time, when she talked to me the first time, she already went through attempted suicide 2 times. She tried to kill herself twice. She went into depression. And she never talked to her mom about anything. All what her dad and mom would see, just she's depression for some reason that we don't know. She never saw even a psychiatrist in Egypt. But she comes to this country and she finds a good, caring father of confession. And I started to take care of that young lady. But during those years, she was diagnosed with bipolar disorder and diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. She was put on medication. And one day she called me. I was doing some service in Texas, and she called me from a very far state after trying to commit suicide again. But her behavior didn't stop like that. She was so confused about sexuality. She would masturbate and touch herself until she bleeds. She would go and get drunk all of a sudden. And what can be scary most, when she engages in or trying to engage in any homosexual activity, she started to look into homosexual porn. One day she called me. She said, I found out a house, lesbians live in that house. I want to go and join them. Just watch. Look how the confusion happened. But thank God, this is one good case, because she ended up in recovery, healing. She got married and have children nowadays. She's doing very well. I will go and talk a little bit about a boy, 10 years old boy. Another sad story. When he was 10, someone sent him, his father or mother, go downstairs and buy us some sugar or rice or tea or anything from the grocery store downstairs. He would go, and the guy inside in the store would ask him, can you come with me inside? He took him into an inner room and took off his clothes and started to touch him sexually. Years and years later, I was just talking in a family retreat one day, and he came to me. Now he's married with 2 children, and started to tell his sad story. He loved his wife, but he also had problems with homosexuality. At any point that he may find a chance, he would leave his wife at home and his children and go and have sex with a man. And while even making love with his wife, and he's, by the way, is a very, very religious person, great servant in church. But the trauma is playing with his mind. He says, while I am with my wife, I imagine myself, I am with another man, not with my wife. Very sad story. And in order for him to keep his sanity and self-control, and he is having a good job, good income job, he had to talk to somebody, to keep contact with someone to help. And we have stories and stories like that. But I tell you, some of those stories are really good. I have cases when I saw that person when he was 14 years old, having sexual relationship, not me, I didn't see him personally, but his peers at school told me, sexual relationship with other boys. But years and years later, I see him a very successful husband with a wife and 2 children. A 9-year-old girl would be sexually molested and abused by an old man when she was 9. And she ends up with all disasters that you may imagine. Substance abuse, cutting, attempted suicide, open sexual behaviors. But at one point, I remember that girl, just before her 18th birthday, she found me in one of the meetings of Abuna Dawood Dami somewhere in North America. And she introduced herself, said, can I take your phone number or email? Because we were talking in the meeting, Abuna Dawood and myself, about homosexuality. I said, of course. Later in the day or the following day, she sent me an email under different name. She tried to cover her identity for a while. Then at one point she said, I need your help. I am suffering. At that point, the girl was turning 18 and she was ready to sell herself into pornography industry. She would charge $3,000 per night, and her poor family need the money. But she rejected that. She loved God. And you know, to make the long story short, that young lady stopped completely. After years and years, now she's probably 25 or 26. She went and spent some days, few weeks, in a convent, a monastery for nuns, and she loved Christ like no one else. Even when she had a girlfriend, she loved God and stopped everything. So I tell you, our objectives of treatment of homosexuality and bisexuality is only one thing. It's called abstinence, and it is possible. How? Love them, accept them, listen to their stories, show them compassion and empathy, show them that you care. I remember that young lady at age 18, while she was preparing to meet with someone to sign an agreement on her 18th birthday to work in pornography, the church sent her some money and sent a message, don't do that. God will give you a good job on your 18th birthday. And then she called me on her 18th birthday to tell me, can you believe that, Uncle Yousry? I have today, my birthday, 3 job offers. The following day, she took all the vodka bottles. She used to drink vodka, hard liquor, hiding the bottles under her bed to hide it from her family. She used to open all the internet websites to sell her body or without money, etc., etc. 6 years later, she's doing great. She left her girlfriend. She's having a lot to do with dedication to Christ. And she started to form a self-support group. And she told me about another girl, little bit older than her. That girl, when she was 9, she used to be attacked by her father. And her father used to take her in bed instead of his wife to have sex with her. For 9 years, that case actually went to Pope Shenouda himself. And she ended up becoming a lesbian. Now at age 30, she stopped everything. She's living with a Christian woman, and they do Bible study and pray every day, and she is guided by her father of confession. We don't give up on those cases. We love them. We have compassion upon them. We accept them, etc. Victims of upbringing. Those people, young children who don't have fathers and live with their mother only, they develop this kind of feminine appearance. Or when the father is not a strong male figure, those cases, their boys, their children, their sons may not be well with their identity. So it's very important to deepen gender identity in the family. A father should be a man. A mother should be a woman with all emotions. A man doesn't have to be violent or aggressive, but a man in his manhood, a leader, a role model. His sons need that. A mother needs to be a real mother. Their daughters, teenage daughters, need to see that, and so on. Moms over and under attachments. When mama or mommy is over attached to a boy, this boy might end up with becoming sexually compromised. Or the opposite. If she had no attachment, no bonding with her boys, the boy may get confused about that, about his own identity. Children of alcoholics sometimes are exposed to rape and sexual abuse by their alcoholic parents. That can be a leading factor in upbringing. Victims of child physical abuse. That girl who called me years ago, she was 26 or 27. She told me about her father. He used to pull her from her hair when she was 4 and 5 and 6. She hated men, and she turned to become lesbian, and so on. Victims of power and peers have to be careful about sleepovers.
Excuse me, Doctor.
Yes.
Can you power? Victim of power.
Power means I overpower the strong, will overpower the weak. Control. Power and control. And that happens a lot, for example, sleepovers, in camps, for example. Because, I mean, especially if we teach our children that anyone who is older than you, you have to obey them. Big time mistake in parenting. When you raise your children to become people pleasers, your child may fall victim of an older child whether it is a brother or a sister or a cousin or relative or someone else. The power here is through control, bullying. And that's how a child may be exposed to sexual trauma at a very sensitive age. You know, remember the sensitive age I mentioned earlier? The pre-teens, or we call it the tweens, age 10, 11, 12. Very sensitive. Camps and retreats, the same thing. Schools and bullying. Even churches can happen such power and control issues. Victims after marriage, and that's another, another situation that leads into bisexuality. I remember one time I was serving in Toronto, Canada. That was maybe 10 years ago. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, somebody called me. A man, he told me his age was 42, 43, and he was crying like a baby. What's wrong with you, gentleman? I said, I just made it. What do you talk about? I just had sex with another man, young man. And I am married, I have children. I have been married for several years. Of course, he was so troubled with guilt, overburdened with guilt. What's behind that? Sometimes you hear those stories. Like a wife is not sexually fulfilled may go and have sex with another lady. Yeah, it can happen. But these are preventable issues, preventable problems. Especially when there is lack of emotional fulfillment and gratification. Treatment, starting to treat anybody early as possible. You know why? Because that's the problem these days. You see cases starting at age 10 and 12 and 13 and 14. And they come to their parents, tell them, I am a lesbian, I want to be a gay. Don't forget the impact of the society on them. Because they go to school, and in school they are open about this subject at school. They hear their friends saying, I'm a gay, I'm a lesbian, I'm bisexual, I am playing with fire. They are talking about things they don't even understand. But unfortunately, some of those kids even engage in some sexual acts like grinding, for example, or making out. But these are signs to raise the flagpole. Quickly, if you spot any case at early age, remember, this case can be saved and treated very efficiently if you take care of that case. We had many cases like that, especially in the past few years. They need to talk, to speak, and most likely there is some problem at home. Like a girl that never bonded with her father at age 12 and 13, she finds herself attracted to girls. And somebody would tell her, you still look like you're a lesbian. Same with a boy who never bonded with his mom. These cases can be treated through working on the dynamics inside the family. Dynamics of love and attachment inside the family. They benefit a lot if you send them to a nice spiritual place, like a monastery, at a young age they need to go with their parents, and so on. Then there is therapy and counseling. In the old days, unfortunately, we lost the called Exodus International a few years ago. They went out of business. Exodus International is an organization that used to treat tens of thousands of homosexuals in a very spiritual way. It's a Christian organization. However, homosexuals started to fight, to wage a very, very severe war against Exodus International, until they went out of business. And I heard recently that even apologized that they were trying to treat homosexuals. So nowadays, we are left with very few sources. I was talking to one of the priests or bishops somewhere about what the Roman Catholic Church do in such cases. Because we know that the Roman Catholic Church is against homosexuality. And the answer came very sadly that our sister church, the Roman Catholic Church, is trying to avoid at all doing anything about homosexuality because of what was going on with their clergy, the pedophile case, etc. But still, if we have, and that's something that we encourage, if we have a psychologist in our community, social worker, a counselor, who can, offer time to help these cases, but should be done unofficially, not through clinics or government, because if somebody would call against that person, he or she might lose their license, unfortunately. We are living in a time that we need to pray to God for mercy. Time of mental terrorism when it comes to homosexuality, unfortunately. Very sad. Rehab, Christian treatment centers, of course, may help, but I don't know how they would address that issue. Spiritual approach and choices, it's never too late. I try to give you, and I have plenty of other cases, but the time would restrict me from telling everything. Never. I have a case, a young lady, she was 27 when she approached me. She was trying to get married, but she couldn't. And she had an affair with another girl at one point. But nowadays she dedicated her life completely to serve God. She is a leader in her church. And nobody knows about her identity. She decided not to get married and live in celibacy and serve Christ. Many good news these days if we work hard with those homosexuals. Maybe 10 years ago I would never be able to tell you that same story, but now, after years and years, I can tell you this is successful. Living in celibacy. This is our objective, to help them and to live in celibacy, dedicated to Christ. God's forgiveness. Huh?
What's the meaning of celibacy? What's the meaning of celibacy?
Celibacy بتولية أو عدد الزواج. God's forgiveness and love. Always work. God's forgiveness, unconditional forgiveness and love. Work, because God has sent His only begotten Son to save sinners, and we are all sinners. Thank you so much, and God be with us all. Amen. Glory be to Him now and forever.